Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Grave New World by the band Strawbs.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So this is officially one of the albums that you guys, the viewers here watching this video, voted for the list. We did a poll about a month ago in which I had 10 open spots on this entire list, and you guys voted on albums, and this one got a lot of votes, so I'm really happy that we're reviewing it today, so hopefully you'll enjoy this long anticipated review. But anyway, for now, here are some of my favorite bits from this album.
Bless the thunder, bless the rain, bless all those who cause us things aren't what they used to be. Oh my, in days gone by.
So normally when we encounter a band for the second or more times on this list, I don't usually give you an overview of it because I usually find it to be unnecessary, but as it happens with Strawbs, the last time we reviewed these guys was back in episode 6 of the series. Episode 6, that's so long ago. Just for context, my average view ratings at that time was about like 0 to nada. So with that being said, let's start anew and reintroduce who Strawbs are. So Strawbs are probably the earliest band that we have on this list, forming back in 1964, 5 whopping years before prog even became a thing. These guys, much like the Muddy Blues, they started off early, but of course they weren't producing progressive rock music back in the time. Strawbs actually began as a medieval and folk band which performed this type of music, and they were later morphed into a progressive rock band mainly led by Dave Cousins. Now, nevertheless, Strawbs never really left their roots, and they were one of the first progressive rock bands to actually incorporate medieval and folk music into the style of prog. Now, last time I heard Strawbs in episode 6 was when we listened to From the Witchwood, which is the album that came out in 1971 before the one we are reviewing today. Now, that album I didn't really necessarily that much like, but the song In Amongst the Roses is one that still comes back and time again in my playlist and just in my head as a whole. Like, I would go sometimes and this song would just start playing in my head. It's a really good song which I didn't necessarily love that much in the first place. And From the Witchwood was also the last album in which Rick Wakeman acted as keyboardist for this band. Now, as I stated in that video, I think that he was mostly underutilized back then with Strawbs, and moving on to Yes in the same year was a great decision for him. Really let him shine and let Yes shine, and also let Strawbs find a new keyboardist that would redefine some of their sound. So Wakeman was replaced by a person called Blue Weaver, and in 1972 the band released the album that we're reviewing today called Grave New World, and this one is considered to be their best album, probably alongside their 1974 album Hero and Heroine, an album which I personally know and really much love. Now, Grave New World is a concept concept album, and it goes with a concept that we've seen being used time and time again in many sort of albums, and it's of course the concept of a person's lifetime from birth until death, what they go through, what they experience, and what it means to live as a human being on Earth. Now I know that this concept was done multiple times, but we gotta remember two things. The first one being that these guys were one of the first to actually do so, and the second one is the fact that, you know, it works and it's a great concept and there's so many interpretations you can give to it, so why the heck not do so? Now personally, I was blown away by this album. I am so glad that you viewers recommended this one to me, because it would have been a great miss not to listen to this one this year. It is just a fantastic album. It has a lot of the things that I like about my prog. It is folky, it has a lot of symphonic and orchestral instruments in it, it is very much eclectic, and you know what, it's just really good prog. So I'm not gonna dissect this album song by song, and I'm initially very sorry if anyone doesn't get to hear me say or talk about their favorite track from this album, but I'm gonna touch upon a few ones which I think are worthy of mentioning, so here we go. The album opens up with Benedictus, a great prog song which is also quite accessible and it really sounds great, and being naive as I was, I chose this one as my favorite, thinking that it would just remain my favorite from this entire album, but boy, I was wrong. A few songs afterwards came the track Heavy Disguise, and this one is a great track that really showed the potential that this album has, especially when using brass instruments. It is so good and I really enjoyed it, again thinking that it would be my favorite and being utterly wrong about it. The track New World is also a fantastic song which turned out to be a hit from this album, and I like the way that this one is both proggy and accessible at the same time and generally really fun to listen to. But if New World was one of the tracks that really sounded like it was taken from Hero and Heroine, we have a track on here that is definitely one of my two favorites from this album, which I believe is an original for this type of album that we're listening to today, and that track is of course Tomorrow. Now Tomorrow is your classic prog track. It sounds good, it is proggy, it has all the elements that make up for good old prog, and it just made me go like, when I listened to it, it was so like, I don't know how you'd call it, like it had that factor to it, and it was really good. I personally came back to listen to this one again and again, but as I said, it is one of my two favorites from this album. You see, my second favorite from this album would actually be kind of a cheat, because this song isn't that prog at all, and it's definitely very short. And the track I'm referring to is Ah Me, Ah My. This song is definitely composed like one of those 40s or 50s tracks that you'd usually find on Disney movies, as one of those very classical songs with the choir. It's fun, it's uplifting, it's very vocally impressive by the way, and the harmonies are just great on it, and it really shows the best features that Strawbs are capable of. And I love this track, and it really caught me off by surprise, and it really fits well with this entire album somehow. I don't really know how they managed to do it, and I loved it very much, but it kind of feels like a cheat as choosing it as my favorite. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why is it so important that I choose a favorite? And that's because I have a playlist with one favorite from each and every album that I reviewed on this entire list. And the thing is, I have to choose one, and I think that in this case I'm actually really going to go with Ah Me, Ah My instead of Tomorrow, just because it's really like an refreshener of some sort, and it's really interesting to hear it amongst the other very proggy tracks that I have on this playlist. But Tomorrow is a song that I'll definitely not forget as well. And this album ends with two amazing tracks that sort of just celebrate death, and they're both called Here It Comes and I'm Going Home. Now especially I'm Going Home is a celebration of life and its end, and I really love that, and I find it to be a great attitude towards, you know, the end of life, seeing as it was very eventful, very fulfilling, and it was just a good life that has come now to an end. And instead of looking at it with sadness, one can look at it as an end of the best party ever, basically. This is definitely a play this at my funeral song. So yeah, this is about all of this album. Of course, I missed a few tracks, but that's because I really wanted to pinpoint my favorites and the most interesting ones out of this. But you'll have to excuse me now because I'm gonna ponder a bit, because I really don't know which album I prefer better, whether it be this one or Hero and Heroine. Both are so good, and I guess it just take a few more listens of both to actually, you know, compare and choose one decision. And of course, it doesn't have to be that important. They can both be equally good, but for now I'm gonna think about that, and I'll see you all when we talk about the cover. So the cover for this album is quite a pompous one, if I might say, and personally I believe that it features the best logo that Strawbs has ever shown on one of their album covers, and unfortunately they've never used it ever again. And on this cover we mainly see a boy or a youth, an adolescent, who is critically undressed, standing in some crepuscular lights and looking semi-holy. And you know, this can mean a lot of things, but it's basically just being alive and what it means, and you can take this painting in so many directions. And this is also the place where I should talk about the title for this album, called Grave New World. Of course, grave means serious, and of course it also has the connotation of just being a grave, something that is usually not associated with good things. But the thing is, with this album, despite its name, it does feature some very bright and uplifting music that talks about life. It doesn't always have to be poppy and fun and just shining, but it does always look at things with a positive attitude. That's why it's so interesting that they chose to name this album Grave New World. But I guess that this oxymoron works because it makes the music all the more impactful and all the more interesting to listen to. So this album almost nails the spot, but it has a few hiccups along the way, so for now it's gonna get a very prestigious rating of 9 out of 10. But yeah, that's about it guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're gonna be listening to Open Window by Plus33. I bet right now that none of you have ever heard this name, nor of this album, nor of this band. They are critically obscure, but I highly recommend anyone watching this section right now to wait, or if it's out now, to go ahead and watch tomorrow's episode, because definitely this discovery might be one that is worth your time. But yeah, anyway, I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wanham, Ristif Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.